People don't always come back because they love you. Sometimes they come back just to see if they still can. That's the kind of truth most people aren't ready to hear. But my friends, it's time we stop wrapping manipulation in the disguise of love. It's time we stop confusing a return with redemption. The title of this one says it all. They come back, not for love, but because of this. And by the time we're done, you'll never look at their return the same way again. So do me a favor. If you've ever had someone walk away only to circle back like they've had a spiritual awakening, hit that like button. And if you're ready to stop falling for recycled chaos dressed up as romance, go ahead and subscribe. Because what you're about to hear isn't just advice, it's a mirror, and it might just show you why you were the strong one all along. Now, hey folks, imagine this. You're a campfire, burning warm, offering light. They didn't want to sit by your fire when you needed them the most. But now, after wandering through their own cold forest, they're back, hands outstretched, trying to warm themselves by a flame they once walked away from. Not because they miss you, but because you're comfortable, because your light is still burning, and they're hoping you'll hold out that warmth for free. Let that sink in. You were not chosen, you were convenient. And I know that's hard to admit, because we want to believe people return when they've healed, grown, evolved. We want to believe that our love was unforgettable, that our presence left a mark. And maybe it did. But here's the raw part, the part most folks never see coming. Sometimes they don't come back for connection, they come back for control. It's not always love that drives them, it's ego. It's not the heart that misses you, it's the mind that panics when your silence echoes louder than their excuses. It's the fear that someone else might now be basking in the attention they used to waste. And guess what? That's not romance. That's regret flavored with entitlement. They come back not because they've changed, but because you did. You stopped feeding the dynamic. You stopped explaining yourself, stopped reacting to their breadcrumbs, and suddenly they're curious. Not curious about your soul, curious if they still have a key to the house they abandoned. That's not love, my friends, that's a test, and you don't need to take it. The Stoics taught us something simple, but life-changing. Don't get attached to outcomes. Get attached to clarity. See what is, not what you wish it was. So when they reappear in your inbox or your DMs, saying things like, "I've been thinking about us," understand, what they're really thinking about is you not thinking about them anymore. Because you're not just the same person they left behind. You've become someone who doesn't beg to be seen. You've become someone who no longer takes silence as affection or confusion as love. That shift, it's what makes you magnetic now, not the chasing, not the waiting, but the stillness, the calm, the peace. So remember this the next time they pop up out of nowhere. You are not a pit stop for the emotionally indecisive. You are a final destination for someone who knows your value. You hear me? Write it in the comments. I protect my peace. Say it, show it, live it. And if this hit you in the gut or lit a fire in your chest, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button and subscribe, because we're just getting started. Stay with me, because next, we're about to break down exactly what's going on in their mind when they try to walk back in your life like they never left. Let's go. Number 1, they return to reclaim control, not connection. It's not love they miss, it's the power they had over you. Let that one settle into your chest, because this isn't the fairy tale they want you to believe. When they come back, it's not always because they suddenly saw the light or felt some divine thunderbolt of realization about your worth. No, my friends, many times they return not for the connection you had, but for the control they lost. It's not about you, it's about their grip on you. That's what's slipping through their fingers, and that's what their ego can't handle. Picture this. You were once a puppet in their story, a character always on standby, ready to comfort, forgive, and prove your worth. But the moment you cut the strings, they panic. Not because they want to rewrite the story together, but because they no longer control the script. Your silence? It's a glitch in their game. Your peace? It's a threat to their illusion of control. Now you're probably wondering, but what if they really changed? What if they missed me? What if this time is different? That's exactly the trap. That's the emotional bait. They dangle a little attention, sprinkle a little nostalgia, and hope you'll forget how it all went down. They're not banking on your healing, they're betting on your hope. Because if they can stir up just enough what if, they can slide right back into the space they once occupied without earning it. See, they don't come back to rebuild, they come back to reclaim. They want to know if they still have access to your emotions, your time, your energy. They want to see if you'll still flinch when they pull away or light up when they drop a compliment. It's a power play, not a love story. And deep down, you might already feel it. That knot in your stomach, that voice in your chest that says, "This feels familiar," and not in a good way. That's your intuition trying to whisper over the noise of your nostalgia. Because here's the hard truth. If someone really missed you, if someone truly regretted losing you, they wouldn't return casually. They'd return with humility, with clarity, with changed behavior, not recycled words. But when they come back and pretend like nothing happened, or worse, act like you should be grateful for their presence, that's not healing. That's manipulation. That's entitlement. They're not showing up because they see your worth. They're showing up because you stopped giving it to them for free. The fear you feel, the part of you that hesitates to walk away again, it's not weakness, it's conditioning. You were conditioned to believe that love requires endurance, that the right person is the one who finally comes back. But that's the lie. The truth? Real love doesn't need to leave to learn your value. Real love doesn't test you like a game to be won. Real love sees you, chooses you, and stays. So why is this hard? Because your nervous system remembers the high, the chaos, the chase. There's a part of you that equated their return with validation, that finally you were good enough. But listen, folks, you were always enough. They just weren't capable of honoring it. And now that you've stopped offering it unconditionally, they're confused, not heartbroken, just disrupted. This is the moment where you rise, where you say, no more. No more being the emotional playground for someone who doesn't even bring their own peace. No more handing out chances to someone who treats you like an option. No more explaining your worth to someone who only values what they have to chase. Because now you're the one with the power to choose peace over chaos. The power to protect your space, the power to not answer the door when confusion comes knocking in the disguise of just checking in. You don't owe anyone access to you just because they remember you when they're lonely. This isn't bitterness. This is clarity. This is what happens when you break the pattern and finally realize that you were the light all along. They just didn't know how to stand in it without casting shadows. So when they come back, ask yourself, is this love or is this a leash? Is this change or is this just a chase? If you can't feel the difference, look at the energy. Real love feels like calm, like peace, like safety. But when they return with the same old story in a new costume, it'll feel like anxiety, confusion, and doubt. That's not your future, that's your test. Let them return. Let them say what they need to say, but you stay grounded. You stay aware. You stay in your worth. Because this time, the choice isn't theirs, it's yours. And if this truth shook something inside you, write it in the comments right now. I choose clarity over chaos. Say it. Type it. Own it. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that you're not the same version they left behind. Because next we're diving even deeper. We're going to unpack what really triggers their return. And spoiler alert, it's not your tears, it's your transformation. Stay with me. And if this just gave you the power you needed, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe for more truth bombs and emotional clarity. Let's keep going. Number 2, they come back to test their grip on you. Sometimes they don't come back because they want you. They come back to see if you still want them. Yeah, folks, this one hits where it hurts, because this isn't the kind of return people write poetry about. It's not some grand apology with tears and flowers. It's more like a quiet message out of nowhere. A vague, "Hey, just thinking about you." No context, no accountability. Just enough to shake your ground, just enough to see if you're still standing in the same emotional spot they left you in. Let's call it what it is, a test. They want to know, do they still have emotional real estate in your mind? Can they still stir up your heart with one message? Are you still orbiting them, even after all this time? That's what they're checking for. It's not love, it's leverage. And let me paint it for you in a way that hits deeper. Imagine someone walking through a house they used to own. They don't live there anymore. They chose to move out. But one day they sneak back through the door, not because they want to stay, but because they want to see if they still have a key that works. That's what their text is. That's what their "I miss you" really means. It's not a reunion, it's a lockpick. And here's where it gets even more twisted. They don't even need you to respond with love. They just need any response. Anger, that works. Sadness, that works too. Even silence, but only if it's hesitant silence. You see, for people who thrive off emotional control, your reaction is their reward. Doesn't matter if it's warm or cold. If they can shake you, they still got it. This is the mind game most people fall into without even realizing. Because let's be honest, who doesn't want to believe in second chances? Who doesn't want to think that maybe, just maybe, someone finally understood your worth? That they're back because they finally see you? But don't confuse curiosity with clarity. Don't confuse interest with investment. And definitely don't confuse emotional testing with transformation. When someone comes back to test the waters, they do it just enough to see if you'll reach. And if you do, they've got confirmation. The hook still works. You're still emotionally tied. And guess what? That's all they needed. Mission complete. They got what they came for. And now they vanish again, leaving you worse than before, not because they left, but because they reopened a wound that was just starting to close. It's not fair, but it's real. And here's the brutal truth. If someone truly changed, they wouldn't come back with questions. They'd come back with answers. Answers to the pain they caused. Answers to the silence they gave you. They'd come back with truth, with effort, with clarity. Not breadcrumbs, not vague messages, not just checking in. Because love doesn't tiptoe, love doesn't test. But ego, oh, ego loves the test. Ego loves to know that even after everything, you're still reachable. That even after the silence, the healing, the growth, you still flinch when they appear. They're not looking for commitment. They're looking for confirmation. Now let's talk about why they even need to test you in the first place. Because here's what most people don't realize. People with avoidant tendencies crave control more than closeness. When you pulled away, you didn't just disappear. You disrupted their sense of emotional dominance. You stopped chasing. You stopped reacting. You stopped needing them. And that silence, that disconnection, it challenged their ego in a way nothing else could. So now, they're not just checking if you're still hurt. They're checking if they still matter. Because if they can't access your emotions anymore, if their presence doesn't stir you, if their words don't shake you, They've lost something far more terrifying than a partner. They've lost control of their image in your mind. And let me tell you, there is nothing more unsettling to someone with control issues than realizing they've lost emotional influence over someone who used to bend for them. But you're not bending anymore. You're not folding into their rhythm. You're not playing their game. And they feel that. Oh, they feel it. That's why they show back up. Not to rebuild, but to revisit. Not to love, but to label. To see if they still own the narrative. If they still own you. So what do? You stay grounded. You don't panic. You don't romanticize the message. You don't put their hey on a pedestal and turn it into a love song. You see it for what it is, a ping, a test. And just because someone sends a signal doesn't mean you have to respond. That's your power now. Because when someone returns with half effort, it's not your job to meet them with full energy. You're not here to prove anything. You're not here to explain your healing or showcase your worth like a portfolio. Your peace is not a stage for their drama. And this is the shift that changes everything. The moment you stop chasing the past and start protecting your present. The moment you realize your silence is stronger than any message you could send. Because your silence says, I'm not here to play, I'm here to grow, and I don't belong to who I used to be. They'll feel that shift. Trust me. Because when you don't react, when you don't validate, when you don't flinch, that's when they start to question what they lost. That's when the test backfires. That's when they realize the version of you they're testing doesn't exist anymore. So, if you've ever felt that itch to respond, just to see what they'd say, pause, breathe, ask yourself, do I want closure or do I want clarity? Do I want love or do I want control back too? Because if the answer isn't love grounded in reality, it's not worth reopening the door. You don't owe anyone another entry into your peace just because they missed the sound of your voice in their silence. Let them test. Let them wonder. Let them feel the space that used to be filled with your forgiveness and your effort. And this time, don't fill it. Write it in the comments. I don't respond to tests. Say it loud. Say it proud. Say it for the version of you that always needed to be chosen. And now you choose peace. Now you choose power. Now you choose you. And the next time they test you, remember this. You're not their lesson anymore. You're your own answer. Number 3. It's not regret. It's ego. They didn't come back because they lost you. They came back because they lost control of how you see them. Read that again. See, my friends, we're told to believe that when they come back, it's because they finally understand what they walked away from. That maybe, just maybe, the pain finally caught up to them. That they're haunted by your absence, tortured by your silence and crawling back because they can't live without your presence. But that's not always the truth. Sometimes they're not grieving the loss of the relationship. They're grieving the loss of the role they used to play in your life. The version of themselves that was powerful, admired, desired, adored. And when you stop feeding that version with your energy, your attention, your reactions, that's when they start to feel the emptiness. Not because they're in pain over the love you gave, but because the mirror they used to admire themselves in, you, has gone dark. It's not regret, it's ego. Let's break this down. Imagine someone who stood on a stage every night soaking in applause. You were the audience, clapping the loudest, standing up first, never missing a show. They got used to it. It became normal. But one day, the stage lights come on, and there's no one in the crowd, just silence, no applause, no presence, no validation. That's the moment they start asking, wait, where did they go? Why aren't they watching me anymore? But here's the kicker. They don't miss the audience because they care about the people watching. They miss the feeling of being watched. That's the ego. That's what most of them are really chasing when they come back. And I get it, folks. You want to believe in growth. You want to believe that absence made their heart grow fonder, that they finally realized your worth, that somewhere in the stillness of the night they had an emotional breakthrough and saw you differently. But if they come back saying everything you wanted to hear without showing you anything new, if their words are wrapped in nostalgia but their actions still reek of old habits, that's not reflection, that's strategy. That's ego dressing up as emotional clarity. They don't want you back, they want their reflection back. They want to know that the version of themselves that felt important to you still exists, that they can still walk into your space and be adored the way they used to be. Because nothing terrifies an ego-driven mind more than realizing they're forgettable, replaceable, that someone they once had emotional power over has outgrown the leash. That's what bruises the ego, not the breakup, not the silence, but the realization that they no longer have influence over how you see them. And that's why many of them return, not to reconnect, but to reclaim their image, to reset your view of them, to rewrite their story in your mind before you finish the chapter without them. So let's be real. If they truly felt regret, they wouldn't come back to protect their ego. They'd come back to take accountability, to apologize, to ask, not demand, for space in your life again. But when they slide back into your world casually, as if they're entitled to your presence, that's not love, that's ego begging not to be erased. Now here's the part that messes with your mind. Because when they return and you've been healing and they start acting like they see it now, your heart goes soft. You remember the good moments, the laughter, the closeness. And just like that, you start questioning your own clarity. What if they really changed? What if this is the closure I needed? What if this time? Stop. Ask yourself, who are they trying to protect? You or their image? Because ego doesn't care if you heal, it just cares if you remember them kindly. It wants to leave behind a version of itself that still looks like the hero. And when you don't give them that, when you stop idealizing them, when you stop defending their absence, they feel attacked. Not because you hurt them, but because you stopped believing in their mask. You saw the truth. And here's something else they didn't expect. Your silence wasn't bitter, it was powerful. It wasn't laced with resentment or pettiness. It didn't scream, "I hope you notice me." It simply said, "I no longer need to carry your version of love." That shook them. Because egos don't know how to process unbothered energy. They expect rage, they expect tears, they expect you to fall apart without them. But when you didn't, when you moved on without theatrics, when your life didn't pause after their exit, that's what triggered the return. Not love, not loss, ego. They want to re-enter your story, not to write a new chapter, but to edit the last one, to make sure their name still holds weight, that their absence still matters, that you're still looking over your shoulder, wondering why they left, that you haven't fully closed the book. But you have, because now you know the difference. You know that real regret doesn't knock on your door with charm and small talk. It comes with ownership. Real change doesn't show up to protect its pride. It shows up ready to be vulnerable, even if it means hearing that it's too late. So the next time they come back, pause and ask yourself, is this their heart speaking or their ego screaming not to be forgotten? You'll feel it. Because love feels like humility, like accountability, like peace. Ego feels like noise, like control, like chaos in a prettier outfit. Choose wisely, my friends. Don't let a well-dressed ego slip into the seat that once held your heart. You've come too far to be the mirror they use to fix their self-image. You are not their redemption story. You're your own revolution. Write it in the comments right now. I don't feed egos. Say it, own it, Let the world know the version of you that once clung to crumbs has now become the feast. And guess what? The ones who come back just to see if they still have a seat at your table, they'll find it gone because you're not sitting in the same place anymore. You've moved, you've grown, you've risen, and the reflection they once admired, it no longer serves their ego, it serves your evolution. Number 4, your silence threatened their illusion. The loudest message you ever sent was the one you never said out loud. Silence. That's the one thing they didn't expect from you. Not real silence, not the kind that's calm, not cold, steady, not spiteful, powerful, not performative. Because most people, especially those used to emotional control, expect noise when they leave. Drama, anger, desperation, something they can push back against, something they can feel important inside of. But when you gave them nothing, when you didn't chase, didn't plead, didn't explain, that shattered something they thought they'd never lose, their illusion of who you are and how much control they had over you. See, folks, when you've been in an emotionally one-sided connection, especially with someone avoidant or ego-driven, your silence isn't just quiet, it's war. It disrupts their entire system because your absence is no longer just physical, it's energetic. They're not just wondering why you haven't texted, they're wondering why they don't feel you anymore. You used to be loud in their world, loud in presence, loud in love, loud in apology. You'd text, you'd over-explain, you'd hold space for their confusion while drowning in your own. You were the emotional engine of the relationship, the glue, the effort, the beating heart. And now, you're still, you're composed, you're unreachable. And that's terrifying to someone who built their identity around your reaction. Because for them, control never looked like yelling or demanding. It looked like you always being there, you always being available, you always being invested, even when they weren't. But now, they feel it. The weight of your withdrawal. Not because you slammed the door, but because you didn't leave it cracked open. You closed it, quietly, respectfully, like someone who's done explaining their worth and ready to reclaim their peace. That silence, it's not emptiness, it's proof. Proof that they're not the center of your world anymore. Proof that you're not waiting for closure or a confession or a second round of the same chaos. Proof that you've outgrown the role they cast you in, and the illusion begins to crack. Because here's the truth. They weren't just in love with you, they were in love with the version of themselves you reflected back. The version that felt needed, adored, forgiven. You made them feel big, like the sun. And now that you've stepped out of orbit, they're no longer shining the way they used to. You didn't just leave, they dimmed. And here's where it gets deeper. They didn't just expect you to break. They were counting on it. Because your pain made them feel powerful. Your longing made them feel desired. Your confusion gave them permission to avoid clarity. And now, none of that exists. You took back your energy. You reclaimed your light. You stopped feeding the fire they used to stand in to stay warm. And their illusion starts to burn, because now they're not wondering how to get you back. They're wondering why their tricks aren't working, why the silence isn't broken, why the pattern didn't repeat. And that sends them spiraling, not into love, but into fear. Not because they lost someone, but because they lost control of the narrative. Silence is a funny thing. When you use it from a place of pain, it feels like punishment. But when you use it from a place of peace, it becomes presence, a force, a boundary. And for someone who's used to emotional chaos, your calm becomes the loudest scream they've ever heard. It says, "I'm not playing anymore. I've seen enough. I've healed past the point of needing to be heard." That's what they didn't expect. That's what their ego can't digest. Because to them, your silence isn't just silence, it's exposure. It exposes the imbalance, the neglect, the emotional games, and it forces them to look in the mirror without your reflection propping them up. They don't see love when they look at your silence. They see truth. A truth they've been running from. That they weren't as necessary as they thought. That you're not afraid to be without them. That your world didn't fall apart. It got quieter, cleaner, more grounded, and you like it that way now. That's what breaks the illusion. Because the version of you that once overfunctioned for their under-effort, gone. The version of you that twisted yourself into emotional shapes just to keep the peace, gone. The version of you that begged to be seen while they looked elsewhere for excitement, gone. And in its place, stillness, strength, self-worth. They don't know how to approach this version of you. They don't know how to control someone who doesn't crave their attention anymore. They don't know how to move you when you've already moved on. And so they fumble, they test, they return, not with truth, but with tactics. Because when the illusion shatters, they don't rush to heal. They rush to repair the mask, to see if they can still perform their way into your good graces, to find cracks in your armor that look like hope. But when you don't flinch, when you don't react, when you don't rise to meet their half-effort, that's when they realize the version of themselves they played in your life no longer exists, because you've rewritten the story. You're not the character who waits. You're not the one who texts when they disappear. You're not the one trying to fix what they keep breaking. You're the one who walked away in peace and never looked back for applause. And that, my friends, that is the most threatening thing in the world to someone who survived on the illusion of their power over you. You pulled the curtain back, you ended the show, and the silence. That was the final act. If you've been there, if you're there now, drop it in the comments. My silence is power. Say it. Own it. Let the world know this version of you doesn't need closure, doesn't need chaos, doesn't need noise to feel heard. Because when your silence is built on truth, not tactics, that's when the game ends. And for the first time, they're the ones sitting in the quiet, not because you blocked them, not because you're bitter, but because the illusion they lived in can't survive where you've gone. Next, we're going to uncover why your peace threatens them more than your pain ever did, because that's the part they truly don't understand, how calm shakes them more than conflict ever could. Stay with me. Number 5. Peace triggers them more than conflict. They weren't afraid when you cried. They got scared when you stopped. Yeah, my friends, let that hit where it needs to hit. Because if you've ever dealt with someone who pushes you away only to pull you back in when it's convenient, you know what I'm about to say is true. They weren't shaken by the nights you broke down. They weren't rattled by the messages you poured your heart into. They weren't even fazed by your pleading, your explaining, or your desperate need to be understood. In fact, they expected it, relied on it, because as long as you were reacting, they still had power. But then you stopped. You stopped texting. You stopped chasing. You stopped asking questions that only led to more confusion. You stopped trying to decode their silence, and you found your own. And that silence, that stillness, that peace, that's what triggered them, because chaos, that's familiar to them. Emotional storms are a language they understand. Highs and lows, push and pull, conflict followed by closeness. It's the emotional loop they know how to survive inside of. But peace is foreign. Peace is unpredictable. Peace means they're no longer in control of your emotions, and that scares them more than any fight ever could. See, when you were loud, when your heart was bleeding out in paragraphs, they felt important, central, like the axis of your emotional world. But peace doesn't orbit them. Peace doesn't feed their ego. Peace is you choosing you over the chaos they kept you in. And when you find it, when you step into it, when you wear it like armor, that's when everything shifts. They don't know what to do with your calm, because peace, for someone who's avoidant, emotionally immature, or ego-driven, feels like rejection. Not because you're pushing them away, but because you're not pulling them in. You're not leaning toward them anymore. And that space, the one you used to fill with questions, longing, and love, it's empty now, and they feel it hard. Let me give you a metaphor here. Imagine someone who's used to sailing rough seas, waves, storms, wind. They've learned how to navigate those. They've learned how to feel safe inside chaos. But drop them in still water, no waves, no sound, just stillness, and suddenly they're lost. No storm to fight, no struggle to distract them, just themselves, and the silence they can't escape. That's what your peace does to them. Because in that stillness, they're forced to feel, forced to reflect, forced to hear the echoes of what they did and who they've been. And when you're not there to absorb their guilt, to soften their consequences, to cushion their confusion, that's when the emotional bill starts coming due. And here's the part that might hurt to hear. They didn't avoid you because you were too much. They avoided themselves. You were just the mirror. You reflected the very parts of them they weren't ready to face. And when you found peace, that mirror shattered. Because they no longer see themselves through your love. They now have to see themselves through their own emptiness. And folks, let's be honest. There's a reason they'd rather fight than feel. There's a reason they poke at you emotionally when you're finally calm. It's not always because they miss you. Sometimes it's just because your peace makes them uncomfortable. It reminds them they've lost the emotional grip they used to hold so effortlessly. It shows them you don't need them to feel whole. And that is the real loss. Because once upon a time, they could text you a few words and throw your whole day into a spiral. They could go silent and make you question your worth. They could act distant and still have you showing up with love. But not anymore. Now you're not reacting. Now you're not reaching. Now you're not available for emotional gymnastics. You're grounded. And that quiet energy, that's what makes you dangerous to their dysfunction. Because peace says, I've made peace with your absence. Peace says, I no longer seek your chaos to feel alive. Peace says, you don't get to decide my worth with your inconsistency anymore. And they don't know how to respond to that. So they poke, they test, they show up just enough to stir something in you. And if you react, if you crack, if you break the peace to engage with their confusion again, they feel reassured, like the game is still on, like they still matter. But when you don't, when you choose silence over explanation, stillness over storms, clarity over closure, that's when the game ends, because it was never really about love for them, it was about control. And your peace broke that cycle. Your peace ended their performance. Your peace turned the lights on in a room they'd kept dim for years. And now, they're the one left pacing, reaching, wondering. So don't let anyone tell you that peace is weakness. That silence means surrender. That detachment is cold, because it takes everything in you to not respond when your heart is still healing. It takes strength to sit in stillness when every part of your past is screaming for resolution. It takes courage to not text, not call, not chase what once felt like home. But that's how you reclaim your power, not through arguments, not through emotional speeches, but through the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs chaos to feel seen. Write this in the comments right now. My peace is my power. Show them, show yourself. Show the world around you that this version of you, this peaceful, powerful, grounded version, is not here to beg for attention. You are here to protect your space. Because peace isn't the absence of noise, it's the presence of self-respect. It's the moment you stop being triggered by inconsistency and start being motivated by clarity. It's the shift from needing them to prove something, to realizing you don't need them at all. And in the next part, we're going even deeper, because it's not just about missing you, it's about what they miss about themselves when they're with you. Stay with me. This story isn't done yet. Number 6. They don't miss you. They miss the version of themselves. You reflected. They didn't fall in love with you. They fell in love with the way they looked in your eyes. This one hurts, but it frees you, because it's time to tear off the blindfold and really see what was happening the whole time. You thought they missed you, your heart, your soul, your presence, and maybe they did. But more often than not, what they actually missed was how they felt about themselves when they were around you. Not you, the reflection of themselves they saw through your love. You were the mirror, a damn good one too. When they looked at you, they saw someone who admired them, someone who believed in them, someone who forgave too much, tolerated too long, and kept showing up even when they didn't. You made them feel important, sometimes more than they deserved. And that image, that emotional high, that's what they're craving when they try to come back. Because your love was like lighting for them. It made their flaws disappear in the glow. You saw their pain, their past, their mess, and still you stayed. That made them feel invincible, loved, wanted, safe. But the twisted part, they didn't know how to hold it. They didn't know how to return it. They didn't know how to be that person consistently, so they left. They disappeared. They pushed you away, not because they didn't like how they felt with you, but because they couldn't live up to the version of themselves that you believed in. And when you finally walked away, the mirror shattered, and suddenly they had to face themselves without you there to reflect the good parts back to them, without you reminding them of their potential, without you covering their chaos with calm. And that's when they started to miss you. But here's the truth they'll never say out loud. They didn't miss the real you. They missed the way you made them feel like more than they were. Let me give you a metaphor, folks. Imagine someone standing in front of a carnival mirror. In that mirror, they look taller, stronger, more put together than they feel inside. That mirror is you. And every compliment you gave, every second chance you offered, every time you forgave what should have been unforgivable, it kept the illusion alive. It made them believe they were that bigger version of themselves. But one day, you took the mirror away, and now all they see is their reflection in plain glass. And it's not nearly as flattering. And this is where the confusion kicks in, because when they come back, they might even believe it's love. They might say all the right words. I miss you. I've changed. I've been thinking about us. But what they're really thinking about is what you made them feel about themselves. They're not drawn to your soul. They're drawn to your forgiveness, to your consistency, to your ability to hold space for them while they gave you crumbs. And you? You were the emotional foundation they never learned how to build on their own. They leaned on you, took from you, needed you, but not always in the way you needed to be loved back. Because while you were falling in love with them, they were falling in love with the idea of themselves they saw in your eyes. That's why they can't forget you. That's why, even after months of silence, they'll reach out just to feel the warmth of that mirror again, just to test if the reflection still exists, just to see if they can once again feel like somebody without doing the work of actually becoming that person. But here's the thing, you're not that mirror anymore. You've changed, you've grown, you've healed enough to stop seeing people for who they could be and start accepting who they really are. You no longer build someone up in your mind just because you see glimpses of their light. You no longer ignore the shadows just to keep the dream alive. And that's what they didn't expect. Because the version of you they remember, that version doesn't live here anymore. That version excused things that broke their own heart. That version held the emotional weight of two people. That version lived in hope while drowning in uncertainty. But now your eyes don't light up when their name pops up. Your heart doesn't leap at breadcrumbs. Your love isn't desperate for a home. It is the home. You're no longer in the business of being someone's emotional mirror. You're building your own identity, your own peace, your own light. And the truth is, they can't stand that your glow doesn't reflect them anymore. So when they come back, when they send that casual text, or try to reconnect like nothing happened, ask yourself, do they love me, or do they love how I made them feel about themselves? Are they here for the connection, or for the reflection? Are they drawn to who I am now, or to who they used to be when I adored them unconditionally? If you hesitate to answer, that's your answer. Because love isn't just about how someone makes you feel in their presence. It's about how they show up when the mirror cracks, when the illusions fall, when the masks are off. Love doesn't rely on flattery or fantasy. It shows up for the truth and stays there. So don't fall for the version of them that only exists in the reflection of your old self. Don't hand them the mirror again just because they forgot how to see themselves. And definitely don't shrink yourself to become the person who once needed to be loved through suffering. You are not here to be the emotional makeup for someone who won't wash their face. You are not their therapist, their savior, their stage lighting. You are not their second chance to fix their self-image. You are you, powerful, clear, evolved. And if they can't stand beside you without needing your love to hold them together, let them miss the mirror. Write it in the comments right now. I'm not your reflection. Say it for every version of yourself that ever dimmed your light just to keep someone else feeling whole. Say it for the peace you earned. Say it for the person you're becoming. Because when the mirror breaks, and it has, the only reflection that matters is the one you see in your own eyes. Next, we're peeling back another layer, because what really pulls them back isn't love or longing, it's curiosity. And that, my friends, is a whole different game. Stay with me. In conclusion, what brings them back isn't always love. It's control, curiosity, and ego. But now you see through it. You've reclaimed your peace, your power, and your clarity. If this spoke to your truth, share it with someone who needs it. Hit subscribe and drop "I choose peace" in the comments. No, no,